Toki nimini li yan polo mi yan pima Italia taso temponila ni awen lo matomo Kuala Lumpur lo ma Malaysia mi pali lon ma mas tomo sona suli Malaya. Okay, I think I will speak English from here on, as my speaking skills in Toki Pona are not that great. I don't basically have any chances of using it orally, but I do read and write a lot. I also contribute regularly to Lipu Tempo. Well, I started being interested in Toki Pona. I started learning Toki Pona 2 years ago, thanks to a good friend of mine who sent me a link to a YouTube link to a kind of introduction to Toki Pona, and I fell in love. I immediately bought Sonia's book, Pooh, and I started learning. And I really liked it, and that was fascinating, particularly about the vocabulary, such limited vocabulary that could be used to build longer words. I mean, to basically to express maybe not anything, but most things, just by a combination of words, just by basically circumlocution, by paraphrasing, but I'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to talk here about my research and specifically about my article on Toki Pona that was published last month on the International Academic Journal, Language Progress and Language Planning, which is a sociolinguistic, basically, journal. Very good one. I think the only one that has a section on interlinguistics, where a lot of articles on interesting articles, especially on Esperanto, has been published. But this is the first time they published something in Toki Pona, and I think this is the first article ever on Toki Pona in the area of humanities, and I'm very proud about that. Anyway, before I start introducing my research and my article, I would like to. I'm going to share the screen, and I would like to read the abstract first. Okay. Right, should be here. Okay, I think, I hope you can see it. Okay, this is the end of the article. I mean, all articles published on language progress and language planning have got 3 abstracts. The first one is English on top, and then there is second one in Esperanto, which they provide. And the third one could be in any language, often the first language of the author. In my case, I sent them an abstract in Toki Pona, and they accepted it. So I will start by reading the abstract in Toki Pona. Lipuni di wile luki neni. Toki Pona li ken ala ken wawa e nasin pipona toki pian pikamasona pitoki pimante. Toki Pona li toki sin li lipona. Ona li yo enimi ale mute tu antaso. Lipuni li yo e kipisi lukawan, kipisi wan li toki open, kipisi tu li bana e sona pi Toki Pona, kipisi tu wan li toki e tampi ala sasonani, kipisi tutu li toki e nasin pi pona toki, kotoki, kipisi luka li toki e nasi pi ala sasona, kipisi pini li toki e kili pi ala sasonani. Kili la, ken la, Toki Pona li ken pana e pona tawayam pi kamasona lo nasini. Ona li ken wawa e nasi pi pona toki lo nasini. Ona li sona ala e nimi, la ona li ken pana e sona kepeken nimi mute ante. Nasi pi pona toki li tawani. Yan pi kamasona pi toki pimante, li sona ala ano li sona weke nimi, La ona li pini ala e toki li awen toki. Nila yanante li kensona e toki. I hope you can follow. You could follow a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to explain all this. All right. First of all, I said that I was the thing that fascinated the most about Toki Pona was this limited vocabulary. And then I thought, well, because I'm teaching here, I'm teaching both sociolinguistics to master students and Italian to undergraduate. I thought that my Italian students especially could use Toki Pona, actually. Because the problem with some of them, not all of them, is that when they, especially I'm talking about beginners, the problem is that when they don't know a word, very often they just stop. They expect to know the word they have in mind, and if they don't know it, they stop, or they maybe switch to English. Then not many of them are good at using communication strategies, which we are going to talk about in a second. And I thought, okay, if they learn Toki Pona, they have, Toki Pona is a training in circumlocutions, expressing ideas through putting together different words. And that would greatly help my students. So I thought of this, the possibility of this research. So I found 6 volunteers from my second year class. And of course, I didn't explain them. I didn't explain to them what was exactly the research about. I just told them that I needed the help for my research, that I would explain everything later on. And basically, I devised, I thought of, I'll show you here, 10 sentences. Here, methodology, sorry, here. I thought of 10 sentences in English, which would include 2 or 3 words that I thought the student wouldn't know because of the level of Italian. And then basically I asked them to translate one by one online, because at that time we were still I was still teaching online. So one by one, I showed them one sentence at a time, asked them to translate. I told them, okay, do your best. If you don't know a word, try to explain it some way if you can. That's it. Huh? So the 6 of them did that. I recorded all the translations. And then we started 4 classes of Toki Pona. 45 minutes for each class, once a week. Of course, very little to really learn Toki Pona, but at least, we talked a lot about the words, how to make new words. And so I focused on that. And after the 4 weeks, I told them they would have to do another test. Let's say not a test, but an exercise. But they didn't know what. But basically, I asked them to translate again the same sentences. At that point, it was about 5-6 weeks after the first time they translated it. And then the first time they weren't left with anything, so they couldn't really go home and translate them, etc. So, and they didn't know they would have to do it again. And so I asked them to translate again, one by one, online. And then what I did for my research, I compared the 2 versions, the 2 translations. Later on, 1 week later, 1 week after the second translation, I also asked them to reply to 3 questions. But we can talk about that. The 3 questions were these ones. How did you find Toki Pona? What was the thing about Toki Pona that you found most interesting? Do you think learning some Toki Pona has been useful to you? How so? I will talk about that later. Okay, so I compared the results and the translation. These are the results between the first translation and second translation. Okay, before we look at those, maybe very briefly, let me introduce communication strategy for those who don't know. We are here. Basically, communication strategies are strategies we use all the time, even in our first language, whenever we don't know or we cannot recall a word. So there are many different types of communication strategies. So, for instance, we can paraphrasing, which has been, this is one possible classification. It's been divided in 3 different kinds of paraphrase: approximation, word coinage, and circumlocution. And this research I focus on circumlocutions. That is, the learner describes the characteristics or elements of the object or action instead of using the appropriate target language item or structure. So, for instance, go very fast for run. Then, of course, there are more: borrowing, appeal for assistance, smile, and avoidance. Avoidance is what many of my students did. Topic avoidance. The learner simply tries not to talk about concepts or use a word for which the target language item or structure is not known. Or sometimes out and out message abandonment. The learner begins to talk about the concept, but is unable to continue and stop in mid-utterance. Okay, anyway, going back to the results. Okay, if you look at this, it's as if there were not big differences between the first translation and the second. Maybe here, just the words left in English, there were fewer words left in English the second time. Whereas as far as circumlocutions are concerned, not big differences. But actually, the differences were quite big. The number is deceptive for 2 reasons. First, some of the circumlocutions were actually improved the second time. And secondly, others were simply replaced by a dictionary form as noted above. If we do not include the circumlocutions that remained unchanged or became even simpler, we exclude the circumlocutions that were replaced by the correct word and just consider the cases when a circumlocution was used the second time but not the first, or was improved the second time, we get approximately 14 of these cases here. So basically, the experiment succeeded. It seems as if learning a little bit of Toki Pona improved the communication strategy, the circumlocution, the skills in circumlocutions. Can you see here? This is the first version. This is the 14 examples, and the second version. So here, for instance, first time a student wrote just left the word harbor as it was. Second time she tried. Luogo dove ci sono barche, place where boats are. You see, and so on and so forth. For the monkeys, the first time somebody just left it in English. Monkeys didn't know how to say it in Italian. Second time, animali che gli piace mangiare la banana. Animals who like to eat bananas. So even though we only had 4 classes, 6 students, I think that my research was quite successful. Of course, this is just preliminary research. More research should be carried out, but I'm happy with the results. And just read, before finishing, just read one of the sentences that, my students, some of my students wrote. Sorry, I think they are here at the end. No. They wrote their opinion. Yeah, here, results and discussion, sorry. Should be somewhere here. Yes, yeah. I just read what student 4 wrote. As a foreign language student, it has definitely helped me construct and express my sentences in Italian in simpler ways, especially when I do not know a specific word for a specific item or thing. So instead, I will find a way around it and use the vocabularies that I know to describe that thing as detailed as possible so that the other person can understand what it is that I'm trying to say. So this was the comment at the end of the experiment, one of the comments. Okay, I think that is all. Thank you. I think, yeah, 15 minutes are over. Thank you very much. Sina Pona. Thank you for following. I hope you found this interesting and have a good, enjoy this Toki Pona day. Okay. We close here and stop. Okay. Mi tawa.